Hey everybody, and welcome to February's instalment of Month in Review. So this is a series where I talk about all the new to me board games I played during the previous month, and I rank them from my least favourite to my most favourite. So I've got 18 new titles this month, ranging from some pretty simple fillers all the way up to heavy involved Euros and everything in between. And as usual, these games are often based on just a play or two, so they are some pretty initial thoughts, but some of them are a bit more concrete. Maybe I'll talk about those as I go through. So let's get started at number 18. So my least favourite game of the month is Cosmic Encounter. Now I should say up front that I pretty much knew what I was getting into when I played this. This is like the opposite of what I look for in board gaming. This is a very asymmetrical, very imbalanced, kind of confrontational style game. As you're trying to attack the other players, you can rope in other people to help you. The defender can as well. You're playing massively imbalanced cards against each other to try and trump each other in terms of playing the highest numbers. And this game also has a bunch of interrupts where, if you have a certain card in your hand, you think you've mathed everything out, you think you've worked out and you can, deterministically decide to win a fight, and then all of a sudden here comes the card that you had no idea about to stop that attack. And I detest that style of gameplay, and that's pretty much what this game is all about. So yeah, as expected, I hated it, and yeah, but massive caveat again, I'm a Euro gamer. I like kind of more mechanically balanced games, ones that work well and smoothly. This one is the polar opposite of that. So yeah, unfortunately, Cosmic Encounter lived up to its expectations in my head, but I know there's a massive market out there who enjoy this style of game. So that is Cosmic Encounter at number 18. At number 17, I have Coup, which is a small box card game, a bluffing style game, as you can choose to kind of adopt the power of these different roles to kind of collect money or steal money for other players, and then try to eliminate the other players when you have a certain amount of currency. And it's kind of a last man standing style of game. This one, I got to the table and I wanted to play it because I always heard that this was kind of the head of its genre, always considered quite a good bluffing game. And I will say this one did disappoint me quite a bit, because sometimes when you've got this currency and you're just picking someone pretty much at random to say, I'm eliminating you, or maybe you're basing that on who's got the most lives, and then once everybody's got the same lives, again, you're just picking someone just for the sake of it. So I don't like that style of gameplay, just that player elimination aspect, stuff that you can't really do anything about. And yeah, it just was a bit too abrupt and not my style of gameplay. And funnily enough, I got this game to replace an older game in my collection called Operation Faust, which was like this game where you're bluffing, collecting currency, but that one you're buying artwork to try and get to a certain value, so it wasn't so in your face, and this one kind of got rid of the part I liked about that style of game, and I thought made it worse. So that is Coup at number 17. At number 16, I have Rattus Cartus. So this is the card game version of the board game Rattus. This is a push your luck style game, and I suppose maybe a hand management style game, as at the start of the game there's going to be a bunch of these cards placed face down with this limit of rats on them, and if you ever go above those rats, or at the end of the game if you have above those rats, then you're going to be eliminated. But the objective is that you're trying to use these cards to climb these number of different tracks, and depending on your position on the tracks, you're going to get victory points. But every round, a couple of cards come out that you have to kind of tribute cards to, and if you tribute the matching cards, then you're absolutely fine, and you'll just move up the track that many spaces. But if you decide to tribute cards that don't match, then you'll take a rat token, which which will bring you closer to that rat limit. I don't mind the concept of this game, and I like that idea of that as the game goes on, you start to learn what that threshold is of those rats. But what I really didn't like about this game was just how swingy it was and how lucky it was. So I ended up getting loads and loads of cards of a certain type, and then that building that I needed to tribute those cards towards never came up, and it did work for the other players. So it's like pure luck. There's not really much you can do about it. If you know that rat limit, you know what you've got to play with anyway. So it just didn't work for me, and it was just way too lucky, and yeah, nothing you can do about it. So it's a shame really, because I think it could be a bit of an easy fix, but didn't work for me for that reason. So that is Rattus Cartus at number 16. At number 15, I have Ominos, or Ominos, I don't quite know how you pronounce this one. This one I have only played once, so this is very initial thoughts. This one is an abstract dice rolling game where you have this grid, and you are rolling a die in your turn, and that's going to have a number of different faces on it. kind of related to the different players in the game. One of them does something a bit different, is like kind of a wild. And you are basically trying to bring a cluster of your faces together to try and score them as points. But whenever you put whenever you put a die onto the board, then you can move another die up to 3 spaces. So you can use that to kind of bring your die closer to your cluster, or maybe move your opponents away from their bigger clusters just to slow them down a bit. That's pretty much the gist of the game. I didn't really see the strategies in here, and it felt a bit too random for an abstract, because sometimes you just don't roll the faces that you need, and therefore you don't really have the opportunity to score points in the first place. So yeah, I wasn't too keen on it, but it did feel quite nice to play. It was it has quite a nice kind of throwback design to it. It feels like an old-fashioned toy, which kind of feels quite charming. But still, the jury is out on this one. Maybe some levels of strategy will start to unravel the more I play it. So that is Ominos at number 15. At number 14, I have Shanghaien, which is a 2-player, the filler game, a kind of set collection style game, as you have this row of cards depicting these different pirates. Then you're rolling a pair of dice, and then you are basically, depending on the pip value, you are placing them next to these certain cards of the matching spot on the row. And then the idea is that you're trying to have the majority of those cards, or have the majority of dice, or the dice neighbouring that can kind of boost your power to collect those cards for endgame scoring. So that's very simple stuff. But the thing I did like about this game is the actual scoring mechanism itself, where you would score in relation to what your opponent had of the same suit. So say I had a total value of 5 yellow cards, my opponent had a value of 3, then I would end up scoring 3 because that's what my opponent scored. But if you have all the cards, like get a monopoly on those cards, then you score all those points. And you could use that in quite clever ways. So if you know that your opponent had, say, 8 of a certain type and you had none, and they're about to score all those points, you can maybe claim a 1 card of that type to make sure they only score 1 point, because they only score what you have in front of you. So that was quite a cool mechanism. I think the gameplay is a little bit too straightforward, and you don't really have much kind of mitigation of the dice rolls. But despite that, I think it doesn't work against the game, because it is so simple and it's pretty fast and very accessible. But a good game, and I enjoyed it, and I'll probably play it a few times more. That is Shanghaien at number 14. At number 13, I've had a game that I've been after for quite a while now, since it came out last year. This one is the game 10. So 10 is a push your luck and bidding style game, as you are trying to collect sets of numbers of different colours. So you're trying to create, say, 1 to 10 basically, as your maximum score. And you're doing that in this kind of drawing cards, push your luck mechanism, where you are placing cards out, trying not to go above 10 when you're drawing these numbers out. But whenever you draw these other cards, which have these different kind of tokens on them, then you're bringing that value back down. So it has that back and forth momentum where, I'm up to 9, but then I draw one of these cards down to bring it back down to 4. So you can kind of get more mileage out of your turn that way. And then once you've decided to stop because you don't think you can draw any more cards in the fear of going bust, then you can either choose to take all the numbers and add them to your scoring pile, or you can take those tokens in order to bid for cards in the market which have gone there on previous turns that have been either busted or neglected when they chose the tokens instead. So that was quite cool. I thought the auction mechanism, when you choose to bid for these different cards, was a bit tacked on, because these wild cards would come out and you'd have to stop and do an auction. I didn't think that worked for the game, and it felt like a mechanism too many, or just one too much. And I think that's probably one of the lasting things in this game. So I generally love push your luck games, and this one works well, but I think it's got one too many things just bolted on for the sake of it. But despite that, I did like the game. That is 10 at number 13. At number 12, I have another very simple dice game. This is Pasha by Stefan Dora. This is a kind of a Yahtzee variation, as you're rolling, I think it's 5 dice, and then you are, I think you've got like 2 re-rolls as you would with Yahtzee, and you're trying to build up the best kind of bunch of dice that you can. So, are you going to get a pair? Are you going to get 3 of a kind, or maybe even a full house? And you're basically trying to get as far as you can and get the best possible roll you can. But what I did like about this game is that prior to taking your action or your rolls, you choose to play one of your scoring cards, which determines the points that the winner, the second place, third place, fourth place are going to get at the end. So if you're really confident that you can beat the people who've played before, you can maybe play a higher card. But if you go earlier, then you're kind of more unable to make an informed decision. So that was quite cool. And yeah, that was probably one of the best things I took away from this game. But despite that, this is a game that's very accessible. Anybody can really enjoy this one, just pure dice rolling fun. And I can see this game hitting the table quite regularly because it is so straightforward. So that is Pasha at number 12. At number 11, I have a very popular game with Viticulture by Stonemaier Games. So this one is a kind of a light to medium weight Euro worker placement game based on a vineyard. So you are gathering grapes, these grapevines, you are turning those grapes into wine and you're bottling it up to sell. And it's a pretty straightforward game, but one that works well. I like these upgrades you have on your board as you would constantly kind of upgrade your little vineyard, increase your storage capacity, your capacity to make more kind of vintage wines, getting certain upgrades so you can make other kind of orders and things. I did feel that this game was a bit too luck dependent on some card draws, because a lot of these worker placement spots would be just draw from the order deck for a new order to fulfill, and maybe you didn't have the vines in order to fulfill that order, or you're trying to draw a certain type of grape and it never comes out. That happened to me personally. And one other thing I really didn't like about the game was the swinginess of some of these yellow cards in the game. So you go to this spot which let you draw a yellow card or play a yellow card, I can't remember, and it would some of these cards would be absolutely fantastically powered. Ones that would just do a bunch of things as a single action, and some of them would be like very circumstantial and not too interesting. And for me, that really did dictate the feel of the game, and it kind of, when there was a big move to make, it didn't really feel like you made it. It felt like the game made it by drawing or by playing a certain card, and that just felt a bit unsatisfying for me. But despite all that, I did really like this efficiency puzzle of getting the grapes in, trying to mature them to sell them for more profits, and not to waste that maturity, because every round all your grapes will slide up to the next level, making them more and more mature, which was quite thematic. So a nice game, one that I thought was quite forgettable, which might be quite insulting to some people, but it didn't really do it for me, despite being well-rounded. But a good game, but not one for me, that's for sure. That is Viticulture at number 11. At number 10, I have the Isle of Cats, which has been quite popular over the last couple of years. This one is a drafting and kind of polyomino style game, as you're drafting these cards, which will let you kind of get these cats or currency to get cats. They'll give you these scoring opportunities, which is quite cool. So you'd actually build up what you're going to score throughout the game in order to, which will kind of synergize with the puzzle you're making with the polyominoes you're placing on this boat. So you're placing all these tiles, maybe you're trying to match colors to colors, you're trying to maybe fill the parameter of the boat. All these different criteria develop as the game goes on to get you victory points. So it's quite a satisfying game. And I thought those two distinct mechanisms did synergize with each other very well, and there's quite a lot to consider here. So I thought this was probably one of the best polyomino games I played in recent memory, and I can see why it's popular. So that is Isle of Cats at number 10. At number 9, I have Kingdomino Origins. So this is actually my first experience playing any Kingdomino game. I never played the original or Queen Domino. This one is kind of set in that prehistoric theme, so slightly different skin there. But this one is a very simple domino style game. You're placing these domino shaped tiles onto a little tableau, I suppose, trying to build up, I think it's like a 5x5 grid, it might be bigger, I can't quite remember. Trying to match terrain to terrain and trying to get these different symbols to increase your multipliers, which will get you points at the end of the game. So that was quite cool. I did think there were some things that were quite unnecessary, like these characters would come out which you could buy to score you points in other ways. I thought that was a bit tacked on and took away from some of the purity of the game. But I did really like this volcano mechanism where you take these, some of these tiles would have volcanoes on them, which were pretty much dud spaces, but they would spit out these bits of lava which would land on other tiles and they could increase your multipliers. I thought that was a really cool mechanism. So yeah, other than that, very simple fun, very family friendly, but it works well and is still quite a satisfying puzzle. So that is Kingdomino Origins, a very nice family game. At number 8, I have Mafio Zoo by Rudiger Dorn. This one is a re-implementation of an older game of his called Louis XIV, an area control style game that uses the Istanbul kind of merchant mechanism, where you would take a bunch of tokens and start there, and then you could drop them off one on a row, kind of going down a route. And this one uses that mechanism, but on an area control style game. But this one has this kind of anthropomorphic mafia theme to it, as you're trying to influence all these different mobsters to get you these resource tokens, and then you use those resource tokens to claim buildings on a separate part of the board, which will get you victory points and engine building benefits. So I thought this one flowed really well. Had a good amount of kind of deterministic strategy, but balanced quite well with drafting or drawing cards in the first place to show your starting points on this drop-off mechanism. So that was quite cool. It kind of struck a good balance between strategic but still tactical, and didn't make it too AP prone. But I like the game. I do think that it has definitely has a limit on how many times you can play this one. I've played this a few times now. I think I'm done with it. I still would say check it out if you can, but I don't think it has that massive potential for replayability, because everything is static on the board. There's no modularity. You can't mix all these mob bosses around. You can't mix the buildings around. So it pretty much feels like you're playing the same thing time and time again. But I've already reviewed for this one. It's not been released yet, so keep an eye out for that one. But I'd recommend checking it out because it might appeal to you, and it's a good area control style game. That is Mafioso at number 8. Okay, so starting with 7 here, this is where my shields of quality start. So these are games that have reached at least a 7 out of 10, and ones that I would quite confidently recommend. So at number 7, gaining my first shield of quality, is Last Will by Vladimir Suki. So this is an older design of his. Another relatively simple worker placement game, but something I always say again and again, if you're going to make an entry-level gateway worker placement style game, do something different, because there are so many out there. They're all copy and paste and they all feel exactly the same. This one feels different because purely of the premise of the game is that you start with your points, which is money in this game, and you're trying to waste it as quickly as you can. You're going to be doing that by doing this lavish expenditure by buying houses for high prices and selling them for low prices. Maybe you'll just wait for ages to let the price depreciate and then sell it. You can hire all these helpers that will waste your money for you. Lots of cool things here. A really thematic game, one that I thought was really enjoyable, and the theme came through strongly. And I really like this mechanism of you could choose your kind of actions you take throughout the game. So are you going to draw this many cards? Are you going to get this many workers to place? And that will also determine the initiative on which you're going to play your pieces as well. So that was a really cool mechanism. And I like the game a lot. I'm not quite sure how it will hold up again time after time. But I'm keeping hold of it for now because I do want to play this in a few more, explore what it has to offer, and it plays in a very succinct amount of time as well. So this one might even fit or stay in my collection to fit that entry-level worker placement kind of bracket in my collection. So really nice game. I enjoyed it a lot. That is Last Will at number 7. At number 6, I have a Reiner Knizia game called Celtis, which is, I think it's actually a former Spiel des Jahres winner from a few years back. This one is basically considered Lost Cities, the board game. This one you are trying to acquire these cards, or you always have a hand of cards, and you're playing them in order, either starting high and building to low, or going low and building to high, and you've got, I think it's 5 or 6 different suits. And you're basically, when you play these cards, you are climbing up the relative track. And when you climb up these tracks, you are starting at negative points and then trying to work your way towards positive points. So you can kind of do a bit of a gamble and say, you know what, I'm going to guess that I'm going to get to this point, but sometimes you won't even reach and get out of those negative points, which is quite a cool tension. But this game has some really cool domino effects where you reach certain points on the tracks where you get these tokens, which will again score you more victory points, or you can score straight up victory points, or you can even get these kind of clover spaces, which will, as soon as you reach that spot, it will knock up another one of your tokens on another track, and that can create some really cool cascading effects where this will take up this track, this will take up this track, and so on, and it's really satisfying when that happens. A nice game that tension really shines through. You really have to pace yourself quite well because you don't have so much time to get these things done, and starting on tracks late can be a massive gamble and can end you up in the negative. So it pretty much is Lost Cities, but the board game, and it caters from 2 to 4 players, which is very nice. But really good game. That is Celtis at number 6. At number 5, I have Hadrian's Wall, which is a very grandiose roll and write style game, or a flip and write style game in this example. As there's so much going on here. This is pretty much a massive spreadsheet. You are drawing a card at the start of the turn, which will show the resources that you have, and then you are going to be using all these meeples, because you actually have physical resources in this game in meeples and these resources, to do a bunch of different actions. So you're basically trying to fortify this Roman fort to stop these Picts invading, because at the end of every round a certain amount of Picts will come and attack, and if you can fortify it and protect yourself, then you'll score valor points, which is victory points. Or if they slip through your barricade, then you'll end up scoring negative points. But there are other roll and write tracks or unlocks that you can use to convert them into positive points, or you can kind of do lots of things to kind of again mitigate that risk. You've got this kind of polyomino style part of the game. You've got lots of upgrades you can get. There's a ton going on here. Definitely the most involved roll and write game I've ever played, and to be honest, probably the best roll and write game I've ever played. I will say I went into this game with expectations being sky high, because I'd heard so much good things about this one, and I do think it's a brilliant game. I will say that it doesn't necessarily feel as deep as I would have expected. It kind of feels more wide, and it's got a big breadth to it, but the way the things synergize aren't quite to the level I would have hoped. But despite that, I do think it's a really good game. I mean, it feels like you're playing 3 roll and write games at once. Some of the combos and things you get are massive. You know, you go up this box, or tick this box, which will get you this resource. You spend this resource to get this resource, and you can really string out these long, epic turns where you can get a hell of a lot done. And you're spinning a lot of plates here. So I thought it was a very good game. I played this a couple of times already, really enjoyed it. And to be honest, I think this one's going to be, it might be a grower, or it could go the other way. So this one is kind of on that fence for me, but it's never going to go below a Shield of Quality, because it is that good. But it'd be interesting to see if it's going to reach higher points or slip a bit. But that is Hadrian's Wall. Very good roll and write game. At number 4, I have a small game with Subastral. So Subastral is a game I'm really enjoying at the moment. So this is by Matt Riddle and Ben Pinchback, who I've recently been gushing about because they made a game called Stella, which I really loved. This one is kind of another game in that line, I suppose, by Renegade, as you are basically trying to collect cards to build sets. So a very simple set collection style game, but this one does some things very differently that make me, it really just satisfies me, and I find this game very intriguing. So you have a hand of cards, you are playing them on this communal row of cards, and depending on the number you play, it will have a number of cards to the left of it, to the right of it. So if you play a 4, you've got the 3, 2, and 1 to the left, and the 5 and 6 to the right. And if you take any cards to the left, you're going to add them into your hand for kind of future plays. And if you play anything to the right, you're going to add them in front of you for scoring. And the more cards you collect of different types, the more points you're going to get. But that starts on numerous rows. So if you start again from scratch from the first card you collected, you can create more sets. And on top of that, your 2 most numerous columns of cards, or the most numerous suits you have, score points in relation to how far they are on that track. So if it's the 6th card along and you have 3 cards of it, then you're going to score 18 points, because the 6 times 3. So I really love the scoring mechanism here. It works so well. It feels breezy, it feels thinky, and it's probably one of the best filler games I've played in modern memory. So that is Subastral. Check out my review. I love this game. At number 3, I have an older game with Peloponnes. Peloponnes is a weird mix of a pretty accessible beige Euro, but one with some really cool ongoing tension, some cool auction going on here, or bidding. As you are taking control of this different nation, you're managing the population, the resources, and you're using those resources and currency in order to buy new tiles, and those tiles will give you more population, they'll give you sometimes powers and things. But every so often there will be tiles that come out which will negatively affect you. So it'll be things such as lose a third of your population, or lose a third of your resources, and all these things you've got to try and mitigate and prepare for when they come out. So it's a really cool tension where at the end of each round you'll flip a number of these tokens round, which will start kind of edging towards these catastrophes being triggered. So I love that punishing nature of it and trying to overcome those difficulties. It really reminds me of a game like In the Year of the Dragon, where the game works against you, but the bidding works well too. It's got some really good things going on here. Has a really good balance of being pretty thinky, quite strategic, tactical, but only taking around 45 minutes to play. Strikes a really good balance that way, and I'm really enjoying this one, and I think it's a fantastic game that should be talked about more, but it's kind of faded into obscurity over the years. But very good classic Euro. That is Peloponnes. So let's go into the top 2 now, and these are 2 games with my Elite Shield. So this is the best of the best for me. Games that have ranked at least an 8.5 out of 10. So the best of the best. At number 2, I have Boon Lake, which is the latest game by Alexander Pfister. This is almost Pfister's spin on the Terra Mystica system, as you are putting buildings out onto this communal board, unlocking income as you do so, as you know, you're removing things from your player board and it will reveal currency or reveal victory points. And you are basically trying to build up these settlers and then these houses and then these settlements, which will all generate points in different ways. You have this really cool action selection system where you're basically drafting this action strip, which will determine the actions you can take in the game. You know, it could be create a new space on the board to go to. It could be upgrade one of your pieces already on the board. It could be put one of these cows down in order to score points. But I love the fact that when you take one of these action strips, everybody else gets like a follow-up action which they can take. So everyone is engaged at all times in this game, and then you'll remove that action strip and play it to the bottom of this this table basically, which will really decrease the incentive for other people to use the action again because they can potentially lose victory points. So it has that really cool that back and forth of waiting for actions to build up strength again, because the higher they are, you can go further down this river, which will get you more flexibility, which will get you bigger bonuses. And then you've got all the traditional Alexander Pfister card play on top of it, where you're building up an engine throughout the game. Lots going on here, but surprisingly easy to learn and play, and this one really did go down well for me, and I think it's a very pleasant experience, and probably my favourite, or second favourite, Pfister game, and definitely my favourite Pfister game since Maracaibo. So that is Boon Lake at number 2. Fantastic Pfister. And finally, at number 1, to no surprise, my favourite game of the month is Ark Nova. So Ark Nova, definitely the hotness at the moment. This is a pretty involved, heavy strategic Euro game about building a zoo from scratch. So you're building the enclosures, you're getting animals in from all over the world of different types. You've got your primates, you've got your big cats, you've got your kind of reptiles, and you can put them in a reptile house. You're getting points in different ways. All these cards are unique, there's no duplicates at all. It has that really cool scoring system where you have to balance your appeal of your zoo by getting the coolest animals in, but also with your conservation points, where you get points such as, you know, looking after certain types of animals, or you can even send them back off into the wild. And you're trying to get these 2 different points to cross over each other, much like in a game like Rajas of the Ganges, which is a really cool mechanism. It has a cool tension to it. And this one does that very well. I don't think this game does anything tremendously new or unique, but what it does very well. You know, it manages to embed a lot of strategy and a lot of gameplay into a very core, simple system, as you're basically choosing an action out of these 5 actions. You're removing that card and putting it back to the start of the row, which will increase the power of it the longer you neglect it. And you can upgrade those to make your actions more strong. So much to talk about here. Just go check out my review. I was gushing about this game. I think it's fantastic. It has a brilliant solo mode, which is quite rare for me to say. Yeah, it's fantastic. Believe the hype on this one. I think it's great, and definitely worth your attention at least. Especially if you like games like Terraforming Mars or Underwater Cities. This is very much in that vein and has all those cool card combos. So yeah, my favourite game of the month is Ark Nova. So that concludes this monthly review. I hope you've enjoyed it and something on here has caught your attention. As always, thank you for watching, and be sure to check out my different platforms, Patreon, subscribe if you haven't, leave a comment and like all that good stuff. And for everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.